I gotta admit, even after all my playthroughs and hours in the game, Lunacy still eludes me. It's a very interesting mechanic, but the game does a very poor job of actually explaining what it actually does. So I wanted to make this little video to properly explain the inner machinations of Lunacy and how it works. Before we actually get into things, I want to give a massive thanks to Tesseract on the Akuma Kira Discord. They've been a massive help in making this whole thing and in helping me learn a ton of really awesome stuff that I wouldn't have been able to know or find out by myself. And this video would not have been possible without them. Anyhow, if we want to find out more about this mechanic, the best place to look would be the game's very own manual. The manual gives us a great surface level view of what Lunacy is and what it does. But we're not here for a surface level look, are we? We're here to get our hands dirty and our minds stained with knowledge. So buckle up, soldier, because we're gonna start getting into the nitty gritty of it all, starting with the many ways to actually gain Lunacy. As the manual states, casting spells is a way to increase your Lunacy. The game uses a formula to calculate how much you gain. Said formula looks like this. Let's take Ice Tear as our example spell. The cost of the spell gets multiplied by the maximum amount of mana that you have and then is multiplied by 4. Moon Molt might sound confusing, and it is a very complicated mechanic that I could make a whole video about in itself. But for the sake of simplicity, imagine it as a number from 0 to 10, with 0 being a new moon and 10 being a full moon. Let's say it's a full moon, so this number would be 10. Moon Molt gets multiplied by 2, and then the two values are multiplied by each other, and the result of all of this is how much Lunacy you gain from casting a spell. But there is a very weird bug in this multiplication. You see, the max mana value the game checks for is not actually your maximum mana. It instead checks for the maximum value of the mana bar slider. The problem is, the slider's value isn't always the same as your actual maximum mana. When you take an ocean elixir, your maximum mana is increased, but the mana bar slider's value isn't. This is because the slider gets his value from control, which means that it's only updated when you level up or load a new scene. So if you use an ocean elixir, you will not gain any more Lunacy by casting spells, because the slider's value has stayed the same. This problem of course fixes itself as soon as you enter a new scene, however. This bug could easily be fixed by having the game check for your actual max mana value, and I have no clue why it was implemented this way, and neither does Tesseract. Next up is the increased damage at higher Lunacy. This is far less complicated because it simply linearly scales with your Lunacy. You gain 1% more damage for every percentage of Lunacy that you have, so if you have 100% Lunacy, you'll take 200% damage from all sources. The manual states that higher Lunacy also makes your spells deal more damage, but at the time of the game's release up until very recently, that wasn't actually true at all. For a majority of the game's lifespan up to this point, the manual was just straight up wrong. But the system is finally in the game now and it's also fairly simple. While it certainly looks complicated, it's just a simple exponential increase. Your spell damage starts out with a 0.85 times damage multiplier, and every point of Lunacy adds to it, for a total multiplier of 1.25 times spell damage at 100% Lunacy. This essentially means that all spells got a pretty substantial buff, since all intelligence-based builds deal 1.25 times more damage than they did before at full Lunacy. Since this feature was added recently, there is a lot of bugginess and some spells just don't work properly yet. The most notable exception in my eyes is that for some reason Moonbeam just isn't affected by this at all, because the magic damage increase searches for the spell's root, and since the damaging component for Moonbeam isn't on its root object, its damage just isn't increased, which is especially funny because you'd think a spell called Moonbeam is affected by Lunacy. The last thing the manual states is that higher Lunacy will also increase how much XP you earn. Now to be clear, this specifically counts for regular experience. Weapon experience is not affected by Lunacy. The formula that the game uses to calculate your XP gain looks like this, and is honestly very interesting. Let's say it's a full moon and you have full Lunacy. In that case, these two stats would be divided by 10 and 50 respectively, then they're multiplied by each other, and 1 is added on top, leaving us with 3. But if the value is higher than 2, it just gets reset back to 2. This means that at full Lunacy on a full moon, your experience gain is essentially doubled. This means that Lunacy is incredibly helpful for XP gain. However, if either Lunacy or Moon Molt are 0, this XP increase is entirely negated, so for the sake of your future playthroughs, know that keeping your characters at low Lunacy, even if you aren't going for a mage build, will help a lot for XP gain, and this little bonus can add up real fast. And I do want to elaborate, you don't actually need a full moon to reach this double XP bonus. Here's a graph to help clarify. The x-axis is Lunacy and the y-axis is Moon Molt. If Moon Molt is 5 and Lunacy is at 100%, you will still reach the double XP bonus. The higher the Moon Molt is above this, the less Lunacy required for the double XP multiplier. This caps out at a full moon where you only need 50% Lunacy to get double XP. Everything I've stated so far are things the manual states. However, there is one extra secret mechanic that Lunacy affects, which isn't stated anywhere in the game, and through my 70 plus hours of playing the game, I never even knew about it. For some reason, Lunacy affects how visible the Mygo enemies in the Accursed Tomb are. How exactly this works, I'm not entirely sure because the shader code doesn't decompile properly, but the code does set global variables, which means it affects every Mygo in the Accursed Tomb at once. We can assume it's a simple matter of every percentage of lunacy you have adding a percentage of opacity up until 100% lunacy where they are fully visible. I should however note that this no longer happens once you light the 3 fires of Prometheus in the area. Once you do this, all Mygos are permanently set to 100% opacity, meaning they are always fully visible regardless of your lunacy level. There is one notable exception to this however. You see, in floor 30 of the Tower of Abyss, there is a single Mygo accompanied by 2 mares and 3 mummies on the floor. This Mygo is always set to 100% opacity regardless of your lunacy level. One thing I have noticed throughout my research for this video is that I'm surprised by the lack of small interactions and secrets aside from the Mygo transparency. It's kind of baffling that one of the most immediately striking mechanics doesn't really have that many cool secret things to it. Lunacy has so much more potential to affect things and be a genuinely memorable mechanic. It's a bit insane to me that a hidden mechanic like Moonmold can have so much cool stuff to it, and yet one of the main mechanics of the game doesn't offer that many cool secrets. I really hope that the main game DLC that is alleged to be coming will add more cool lunacy stuff, because Lunacy has so much more potential than the way it's utilized in the game so far. Though honestly, Lunacy is still a really awesome mechanic, and working on this video gave me a totally new perspective on it, and I hope you were able to learn something new about it with this video. And if you didn't, hey, it doesn't hurt to brush up on the basics. So get out there, newest of the fallen, take up your sword and fight. As for me, I have some business to attend to. Later, taters. I do have some more things I want to say, but before we talk about any of that, I'd like to thank my patrons, of course, namely VGFan3000, Skipatronic, Psychoskull, and Blue Phoenix 1. You guys are absolutely amazing and are one of the main motivators for me to actually get these videos done. If you want to support me, you can always go to my Patreon and pledge just $1 a month, or you can follow my Twitter or bluesky, or you can join my Discord server. As you can hear, I'm currently sick actually with the flu. It struck me a bit after I recorded everything, so luckily I sound fine for most of the recordings. I have some fun ideas for future videos I'd like to make, and the next video I'd like to make will actually be uploaded on April 1st, and it won't be a regular video. I'm really looking forward to making more things, and I hope you'll be there next time. I'll see you then. Later, tater.